All right, so we have the definition group. Oh, we have a good crew here. I just scroll over. Hi, Elizabeth. Okay, so definitions, right? I don't want to say we got a softball, but I feel like this one is kind of self-explanatory, although can get overly complicated. So just so we're all starting on the same page, because no experience or knowledge of any of this is necessary. Basically, a data governance framework, part of that is definitions and doing a data dictionary. Essentially, it's a centralized repository, right, of information such as all of your data meaning, relationships, data, origin, usage, and format. However, we're going to make it super simple today. And we're actually going to go through and do an exercise of a data dictionary. So first, has anybody done this before internally within your department for yourself? You know, when people say they don't have time, a part of the framework being definition, it's like, you know, how are you guys all working at the same association, but not necessarily all defining a member the same way or a lapsed member? It makes things really hard, right? So has anybody done this before, even on a mini scale? All fresh.
We're doing it now because we're
Yeah.
getting ready to implement a new database.
Yeah.
So we're calling them business rules. So it's sort of, I guess, the same kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times the definitions stem into business rules. That's actually a great operational use. When we're kind of towards the end of this, we'll go through that. Like you can use it for onboarding, ongoing training for employees, even for your board, so they have an understanding of what you guys are defining and why. So there's a lot of actual practical applications for definitions. Anybody else going through it? No? Okay. So with the way that we do it is we break it down into 5 steps. So this is a how-to session. So that's what we're going to do. I purposely didn't use a pre-made template. I made one while Bill was talking. So I'm going to pull up that's how simple it can be. You know, I have it in Excel, a great place to share if you're just doing this, you know, as an internal working committee. It's just a Google Doc or something on SharePoint where you can kind of still collaborate. Easy as that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share, and then we're going to go through defining some things. There we go. Okay. Can you guys see my 3-minute template? Yeah, perfect. So it could be as easy as this, right? And so I put some things up here we want to gather. And initially, you really do not want to go through and define each thing. If you're going through, the first thing is just to gather terms. So look at some of the reports you guys do, talk to different departments, and just start listing them. And that's where you start. So we're going to do that. So who wants to throw out a business term that you guys use internally?
We use learners for people who are enrolled in our education program. And that term is used regardless whether or not they're a member.
That's a great one. Okay. Just for the sake of showing that there could be different departments or different people, does anybody else use learners as internal business term? No? Okay, that's a great one. What else? What's another term that you use internally at your association?
We have a legacy term for our company members, which is sustaining company members, which we're trying to change with this new system that we're implementing. So it's The thought was these are companies that are sustaining the organization because they pay more dues than an individual. But because we've shifted our dues structure, we just want to call them corporate members going forward. So it's sort of a soon to be legacy thing.
Okay, so that's a great example. And I swear I didn't plug these people in here to say these things. That's a great example because that's why you would have a data dictionary, because I'm sure even after you make this change, there are going to be people ongoing that continue to reference sustaining company members. They're going to be looking for that number. They're going to be showing up at meetings and trying to compare to something that maybe no longer compares. And so a great example of why you'd want to have this as an organization, because you go through changes and you want to shift your legacy to the current vernacular and have everybody on the same page. Okay. What else? I'm going to do 5 terms. Kathleen?
I've got one. At-large director.
Oh, okay.
And these are individuals who are elected onto our board by the membership, as opposed to coming in at a membership level that would automatically put them onto our board.
Got it. All right, 2 more. Who else has one? What about something simple or that could be perceived as simple, like a lapsed member? Does anybody have that term? Elizabeth, did you have one? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to say member.
Okay, yeah. No, that's great.
And this is interesting, I think, too, because at MBOA, our members are schools. They're not individual people. Individual people have relationships to the school who is our member. So sometimes that makes things a little tricky when you assume a member means an individual person, when in our case, it actually means an organization like a school.
Yeah, that's a great one. And then depending on what you're looking at, you might see a list of all the individuals and somebody might interpret that as, oh, we have, 100,000 members. Well, no, those individuals have a relationship with our 500 members or whatever it may be. And so again, having an understanding at a very basic level of what a member is and everybody defining it could be absolutely key. What's another one or another layer of membership that is used within your association?
So for us, we have both different categories of members. So we have like dealers and manufacturers and consultants. And then we also have different levels of membership. So within those categories, you can be an e-member, a core member, or a premier member and get different benefits.
So let's just focus on the dealers. What are the different dealers that you have?
So for both, they're the same across both categories of membership. So it's e-membership, core membership, and premier membership.
Okay. Okay, so then,
oh,
go ahead.
no, I was gonna say for us, we have different dues. Like, so a core dealer may pay less than a core manufacturer.
Got it. Okay, so as you can imagine, we're going to do 5 core terms, but as you go through the organization, you're going to have a lot, right? And so maybe you start with certain departments and you go through and you gathering the terms. And so you start to think about and take notes on how you might create the definitions, but you don't necessarily want to define those. Another, I guess, benefit of doing this is you don't want to focus on what the definition is currently. You want to focus on what you want that definition to be. So in the example that Jill gave, you want to note that it's a sustaining company member. But when you actually put together your data dictionary, you want to use the new term, because that's what you want everybody focused on, is exactly what that new term is and how it's going to be used. So if we're going through and we are putting together our next step, which is the actual definitions, you would take the notes and kind of build these out into exactly what they are. So we'll do this for one of them for the sake of the example, and then talk through a couple of other things. So we'll do learners because that one was first. So we have here, so we'll start with what's an example of a learner? Who, I think maybe Jonathan, did you give this example?
Yeah.
Okay, so an example of a learner is who or what?
Someone who's enrolled in our professional certification program.
And that's it. So they have to be into the professional certification. There are no other learners. So somebody who attends a webinar is not a learner. It's only the people.
So they don't necessarily have to be going for certification, but they have to be engaged in some sort of education program that we offer, not just like a one-off, webinar, or I guess it gets kind of convoluted because if you're certified, then we're counting those continuing education credits as like you're a learner because you're doing that. So
In ongoing, so it cannot be one-off.
yeah.
Where does the data come from? Do you know? Like where is the central database for your learners?
It would be our learning management system.
Do you know what you use? If not, I'll leave it as LMS.
We're moving to course stage.
And these ones get a little bit more technical. I mean, data type, not necessarily, but the measured dimension. And then something else you could add in here, I want to make it as simple as possible, is the actual field names in the database. And so, but for a start, this is a great start where you just have a template and you don't have to wordsmith the definitions at first, right? You're just gathering information. You'll get closer to that. And so this is how simple starting a data dictionary can be, right? The stickier parts get to be, you go through and let's say that Elizabeth at MBOA defines learners a different way, right? She's using it for something different. We're pretending we're all in the same association, but using our own for, for the sake of doing this. So what you do after you have the list of all of the terms is sort by the term, see how much overlap you have. So, oh crap, I have, 7 different ways members are being defined. So what do I do, right? First, you get those individuals into a room or departments, and you go through them. And there are really one of 3 ways that can be resolved, right? So one team takes on the definition of another, or the definition of all. 2, you change the name. I think this is the biggest thing that I don't see happen, is we might define a member different ways. We might even have like an external member number, right, for our website, or an external attendee registration, different than the one we use internally. And so what we want to do is change that, not just to, I've seen people take it one step further and they change it to member external. What you want to do is change it to something a little bit even more precise, to say all member count. And so literally anybody who can possibly be counted as a member is in that member count. Or attendee, same way, where you're counting everybody, but internally you might say, okay, this is our operational attendee number or registration number. And then you have that defined. That means we're removing comp, we're removing this category, we're removing this category. That way, everybody in the organization understands when that term's used, that's the number. So you're not showing up to a meeting or looking at a report being like, I wonder which way they ran the report to get that number. And so it's really a core backbone. So I know it takes time. It doesn't have to take a ton of time. You can start with your top 5 and then go to your top 10. So this is what you do basically if you have more than one. And then the next part would be getting approval, right? Because that's the other thing. It's like you have these working groups, you want to have some sort of executive sponsor, and ultimately you want to get this draft approved and published. I think sometimes that's where it falls off. People have these drafts, they have these working meetings, but then that's it, right? Because they're like, I did the exercise, like check, done. But you don't get the benefit. So you did all that work, but now I think maybe it was Jill that's going through a system upgrade or a new application. You should be able to pull out this document no matter where you are and know that it's up to date and correct and can use this to translate into business rules or be the backbone to your implementation for your software. A resource if I'm looking at a report, if I'm looking at a dashboard. So these are all like practical applications. We kind of got, I think, an easier one than everybody else, right? Definitions. Like we all want to know what we're talking about at an association. And the other one I think I mentioned that I think is often overlooked is onboarding. So this is a great onboarding tool for people to really understand even some of the acronyms, like flying around the hallway. You know, I don't know if any of you recently switched positions or associations, but you walk around and you're like, whoa, what are these? They have all their own terms. Like, what are they talking about? And this really allows somebody to understand, go look it up. That's the next progression from a Google Doc. Maybe you put it into a wiki. So now it's searchable. I was walking down the hallway and I heard somebody say lapsed member. I don't know what that means here. I'm going to go search and I'm going to find out, right? So I know I asked this at the very beginning. I'm going to ask it again now that you've kind of seen how it can work. Does anybody have one? Nobody has one. Kathleen has one.
I kind of do, but it's really out of date. We put it together pre-pandemic and it hasn't been updated. But you mentioning the acronyms was a huge thing because we tossed around a ton of acronyms that new staff would always be like, I don't know what that means. And so we pulled this together and it was a document that we primarily gave to new staff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a great one. And did you have it just in Excel or where did you guys record it and who put it together?
We actually had it in Word, but it should have been in Excel. And it was a combination of myself and our membership team. Now, I'm on the web operations sort of IT side of things. So I help support our membership database. I've also have a long tenure at my organization. I've been here 20 years. So in working with membership too, just, knowledge of publications, acronyms for membership types, things like that. Between the two of us, we pulled them all together.
Yeah, and that's typical. You'll have a mixture of people. You'll have what we call like the business team, right? Where those are the people kind of using the data. Those people really have the power to approve or should have the power to approve definitions. Or the actual business team or business users, business leader, something along those terms. Then typically the IT and the data team are the ones that implement the change. And so after you have something like Kathleen, this is how you'd keep it updated, is you'd have some sort of data team or IT that would, after it's approved by the business unit or the executive sponsor, however you set up your structure, then the data team would have the power to go in and change even a Word document. That's fine. As long as there's some central repository, that's the definition. Doesn't say what it needs to be or what it needs to look like. And then if you have
I want to say, I love the idea of a wiki page.
Yeah.
Because then
It's-
it's not like a document that who knows what somebody named that you can't find later to update anyhow. That's an issue that we tend to have, is that people have different ways of saving information and then you can't find it 3 years
Yeah,
later.
or they
So
save that version, you know, and it's 2 years old and they think it's current.
Right.
That's a
right.
really
I
good
had a
point.
staff member who used to, anytime she updated something, she didn't actually rename it. It just became a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a document. Made me crazy. It's like, give it a date. But I like the wiki idea. I want to see if we can do that, because that would be so much easier, I think, to update than, you know, a Word document that becomes a PDF that gets posted somewhere else. That's actually a really good idea.
Perfect. I'm going to put that in our report out ideas. Any other, I guess, things that you guys want to report out? I mean, that's a great one that we think maybe moving away from Excel because it gets lost and towards some sort of wiki page might help keep it updated, right?
Just looking at these notes that you have, and so we're talking about the definition as like what something is, but it's probably also important to say what something is not.
Yeah.
Mm.
So like you have this example of like this learner has to be in an ongoing program. They are not someone in a one-off learning program. So sometimes the definition of is what something is not.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because otherwise there are assumptions made. And that's the whole point of having some sort of central repository. That's a great point. All right, I think we're leaving out. I'll share our template with everybody, and then anybody feel free to chime in on additional learnings when we report out. And thank you guys. That was fun and different.